"Buy us a house," she whispered, her breath barely brushing my cheek. "Or I'll tell everyone you pushed me down the stairs. That's why I lost the baby." My fingers tightened around the clutch in my hands. The organ began its soft swell behind us, the start of the wedding march. I could see Ethan, waiting at the altar, smiling nervously. Jessica's face remained poised, practiced soft for everyone else. But I had seen the teeth behind it. She turned from me as though nothing had happened and walked down the aisle with the grace of someone utterly untouchable. I didn't follow. I stayed in the hallway, the heavy oak door still open behind me. My heart beat in my ears, not from panic, but from the stillness after. She said it so easily, like a line from a script she'd practiced. The accusation didn't matter to her. The baby didn't matter. I did. I mattered only as an obstacle. 3 weeks ago, when the wedding planner told me I'd be seated near the back by the kitchen. Not even with family, I thought maybe it was a mistake. I was embarrassed, of course, but I convinced myself they were just overwhelmed. Busy. Distracted. Now I could see the shape of the whole thing. This wasn't thoughtlessness, it was strategy. They didn't want a mother at this wedding. They wanted a property owner out of the way. I stepped into the chapel, keeping to the far wall. I didn't sit. I didn't blink. I watched as Jessica took her place beside my son. I saw how Ethan glanced toward the crowd but didn't look for me. Maybe he already knew where I'd been told to sit. Maybe he didn't ask. The priest cleared his throat. The hush settled in. I slid one hand into my clutch and felt the edge of the recorder. Not to press it. Not yet. Just to remind myself it was there. Just in case the lies got louder than the silence. Because this time I wouldn't be folding my hands. The first time Jessica asked about the house, she said it like a joke. "Do you think it's still up to code? These old homes can fall apart without warning." I laughed politely, assuming she was making small talk, but the questions kept coming. What kind of foundation was it? How big was the backyard? Had I ever thought of moving closer to town? At first, I answered without suspicion. Then came the day she asked if I had a will. Ethan was sitting beside her on the couch, scrolling through something on his phone. He didn't even glance up when she asked it. I remember pausing, then changing the subject. Weeks passed. The air between us thinned. Jessica grew colder in small, deliberate ways. A smile that didn't reach her eyes, an invitation rescinded with the phrase, "Just immediate family." Then one evening, Ethan came over alone. He brought takeout, left his shoes by the door like he always had. We sat at the kitchen table. He didn't touch his food. He looked tired when he finally said, "Would you ever think about downsizing, Mom? I mean, the place is too much for you now, right? It'd be a big help for us." A real head start. I set my fork down. Not harshly. Not loudly. Just down. "No," I said. He nodded, not even surprised. And from that moment, I knew it hadn't been his idea. Jessica stopped texting me after that. No more forwarded links to wedding venues. No more friendly check-ins. Just radio silence. That house isn't just where I sleep. It's where I rebuilt myself after Theo died. Where I sat on the floor for hours, too broken to eat, and later planted daffodils because I needed something to bloom. They saw square footage. I saw 20 years of survival. A week later, the rehearsal dinner invitation arrived. My name was spelled wrong. The envelope was addressed to guest. And that's when I noticed something else was missing. The estate was vast, too vast for anything to feel personal. Rows of white folding chairs lined the lawn, and lights dangled from the trees like something out of a catalog. Everything was staged, even the smiles. A teenager handed me the printed program when I arrived. I scanned it, expecting to see my name near the top. I wasn't being vain, it was tradition. Mother of the groom. A small acknowledgement. A line of ink. But it wasn't there. Jessica's mother, Susan, was listed. Her father. Her cousin officiating. Even their family dog had a role, but nothing for me. I found Jessica near the flower arch. Her lipstick matched the rosé in her hand. "Oh," she said, after glancing at the program. "Must be a formatting thing. Sorry about that. But you're here right. That's what matters." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. Ethan came up behind her, kissed her cheek, and gave me the same tired half smile he'd been using for weeks. "Don't overthink it, Mom," he said, like I'd imagined the omission. I found a seat at a small table near the coat rack. Everyone else was grouped by relation. Mine had no name card. I picked at my food. No one spoke to me. Then Jessica stood glass in hand to give her toast. "To the family we choose," she said, looking straight at her bridesmaids. "To the people who support us no matter what. Who don't make things harder." Laughter. Applause. Ethan raised his glass too. I folded my napkin into my lap. I didn't clap. I didn't blink. But something shifted. There was no formatting error. No oversight. No misunderstanding. I wasn't forgotten. I was removed. Later that evening, Susan thanked me for coming. She called me Carla. I didn't correct her. On the way out, I passed by the seating chart. I wasn't on it either. That's when I called Maya. And when she picked up, I asked a question I hadn't dared before. I arrived at the church the day before the wedding, just after noon, when the florist was still unloading crates from the back of her van. I told myself I was there to drop off the card box I'd promised to lend them. But really, I wanted to see for myself. The seating chart stood propped on an easel near the front doors, calligraphy on linen paper framed in gold. I scanned the names slowly. Bridesmaids, groomsmen, parents of the bride, extended family. No mention of me. Not even mother of the groom. I found the coordinator, a young woman named Trina, with a headset around her neck. She looked startled when I asked about the chart. "Oh," she said, flipping through her clipboard. "The bride requested some adjustments to the layout. I was told not to, overcomplicate things." By removing my name, I asked. Her smile faltered. "I just follow what they send me." I thanked her and left. At home, the phone rang just after 5. "Ethan." "Hey," he said, voice tight. "Jessica said you were asking questions at the church." I stayed quiet. He sighed. "Can you just not cause any tension? It's her day. She's under a lot of pressure." "I understand," I said. I don't think he heard the pause before it. He was already thanking me before I even hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time afterward. The house was quiet, except for the faint ticking of the hallway clock. I walked to my desk and opened the bottom drawer. Beneath some old tax folders was a velvet pouch, and inside it, the recorder. My lawyer had given it to me months ago after I updated my will. Just in case he'd said meaning nothing at the time. I placed it on my nightstand and left it there. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I was done pretending not to see what was already in front of me. I just needed one more voice to confirm it. It was Maya who warned me first. She called one Saturday morning, voice tight, like she wasn't sure if she should say it at all. "I didn't want to get involved," she began, "but I was at the salon yesterday. Jessica was there with her maid of honor. They didn't see me in the back." I sat down without realizing it. She said something about getting the deed out of the old woman. Her words, not mine. I didn't speak for a moment. "I can go with you," Maya offered. "We could talk to her together." "No," I said. "I need more than words." From that day forward, I started paying attention to things I used to let slide. I saved every message, every casual request to sign just a quick paper from Jessica, every flippant joke about me holding on to a house I didn't need. At brunch one weekend, she leaned in and asked, "Have you thought about living somewhere with less responsibility?" I smiled, said nothing, slipped my hand into my bag and tapped the button. I never planned to use the recordings, at least not publicly, but I needed them. Not just to protect myself, but to remember I wasn't imagining it. 2 weeks later, I caught it. Jessica was on the phone in my kitchen. She didn't know I was home yet. I stood quietly in the hallway, barely breathing. If she doesn't sign it by the end of the month, Jessica said, I'll say she pushed me. That's how I lost the baby. Ethan will believe me. He always does. My throat tightened. She ended the call and saw me standing there. She smiled. Just smiled. I didn't hear you come in. Neither of us mentioned it again. But that night, I backed up the recording and sent a copy to Maya, and another to my lawyer. I didn't need confrontation. I needed protection. By then, I understood what Jessica wanted, and I finally understood what I had to lose. So the next morning, I opened the box where Theo's ring still sat untouched. The morning of the wedding, I woke before the sun. I moved slowly through the house, opening windows, letting in the cold. I made tea but didn't drink it. I sat at the edge of my bed, clutch in my lap, and opened the drawer of Theo's old dresser. The ring was still there, tucked inside a velvet box I hadn't opened in over a decade. The gold had dulled, but the weight of it still felt like his hand around mine. I slipped it on my finger. Not for memory, not for hope, just for strength. I wore black. Simple, clean pressed. No pearls, no brooches. I didn't want attention, but I also wasn't going to disappear. The chapel was already buzzing when I arrived. Photographers, planners, ushers. Everyone smiling with the urgency of people who think they're part of something beautiful. Jessica spotted me just outside the side entrance. She looked immaculate, lace sleeves, slicked back hair, flawless paint across her face. You look fine, she said. Her smile brittle. Try not to draw attention, okay? I nodded once. No warmth in it. Just acknowledgement. Then I walked past her and into the building. Inside, the pews were already filling. Jessica's family took up the first 3 rows. Susan was holding court, laughing too loudly at something I didn't catch. I found a seat on the far edge near the wall. No one sat beside me. I rested the clutch in my lap and ran my hand along its seam. I could feel the recorder inside, tucked safely into the lining. I didn't know if I'd use it. I didn't know what would push me, but I knew the moment would come. And this time I wouldn't be talked over. I wouldn't be quieted with platitudes or pressure. There was no reconciliation waiting. That door had closed weeks ago. What I wanted now was something else, something colder, maybe, but more honest. Clarity. The music began. The officiant stepped forward. Jessica's veil shimmered beneath the lights. I slid my hand over Theo's ring. Then I rose as the processional started. The music swelled sweet and grand, the way these things are meant to feel. Jessica glided down the aisle like she was walking on air, every camera turned toward her, every face glowing back. Ethan stood at the altar in a tailored suit that didn't quite fit him the way it used to. He looked proud, or maybe just relieved the day had finally arrived. When Jessica reached him, she took his hands with ease, not a flicker of guilt in her eyes. The pastor welcomed everyone and spoke a few practiced words about love, about commitment, about truth. Then he said the line, "If there is anyone here who believes these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now." I rose. Not fast, not loudly, just upright. Chairs creaked, murmurs rippled through the pews. Ethan turned to me, stunned. His mouth opened slightly like he wasn't sure whether to call me mom or not. Jessica's hands tightened on the bouquet. I didn't speak. I walked to the center aisle slowly, carefully, clutch in hand. Then I stopped. I opened it, reached in, and pressed play. Her voice filled the chapel, clear and cold. If she doesn't sign it by the end of the month, I'll say she pushed me. That's how I lost the baby. Ethan will believe me. He always does. Gasps. A chair scraped against the floor. Someone dropped their phone. I didn't turn to see who. I stood still as the words echoed once more, the silence that followed louder than the music had ever been. Ethan stepped back. His face went pale. Jessica's veil shook as she looked from one side of the church to the other, searching for someone to stop it all. No one moved. She screamed, a sound too sharp, too raw for the dress she wore. The pastor lowered his book. Ethan didn't say a word. I clicked the recorder off, tucked it back into the clutch, and walked to the side aisle. By the time I reached the vestibule, I could hear Jessica crying. Ethan hadn't followed. The sanctuary emptied faster than I expected. No music played this time. Just hurried footsteps, lowered voices, the scraping of chairs as people stood and avoided my eyes. The ceremony never resumed. There was no announcement, no official word, just the slow unraveling of expectation until even the decorations looked absurd. Jessica had vanished down the hall, her dress dragging like a ghost behind her. Ethan followed after her. Not a word to me. He didn't turn his head. Not once. I stayed in the pew, the last row this time, where no one would bother asking if I needed anything. Someone finally came by an usher. I didn't know to ask if I'd be needing a ride. I told him I had my own car. He didn't look at me when he nodded. The chapel grew quiet. I sat for a while longer, hands folded, watching the light change through the stained glass. It didn't feel like a victory. It didn't feel like anything at all. Later that night, I turned my phone back on. There was only one message from Ethan. "You ruined everything." I don't care what she said. "You embarrassed us." I read it 3 times, each time slower than the last. There was no mention of what he'd heard with his own ears. No shock. No apology. No grief. Just that word, us, as though he still belonged to her even after everything. I didn't reply. I didn't write a long explanation or send him the full recording. I didn't offer context or plead for understanding. I held my thumb over the screen, tapped once, and watched the message disappear. There was nothing left to explain. I closed the phone, set it down on the counter, and poured a glass of water. Outside, the wind picked up. The daffodils in the garden bent slightly, but didn't break. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not to ask, just to confirm. The trust papers were ready. The deed would be locked down, and Ethan's name would be nowhere near it. 3 weeks passed without a word from Ethan. Not a call, not a knock at the door. The silence didn't ache like I thought it might. It simply settled in like dust on furniture no one used anymore. I changed the locks the second Friday after the wedding. The locksmith didn't ask why, just did his job, handed me the new keys, and thanked me for the tea I didn't remember offering. That afternoon, I signed the final set of documents. The house now sat in a trust-protected, private, untouchable. Ethan's name had been removed from every page. The lawyer didn't blink. He'd seen worse. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt clear. Jessica called twice. Once from her number, once from one I didn't recognize. I let them ring. I didn't block her, didn't answer, didn't react. By the 3rd week, she stopped trying. Ethan didn't call at all. Sometimes I imagined him sitting in whatever apartment he'd retreated to, reading the message I never sent, playing the recording again, searching for the version of events that would make him the victim. But most of the time, I didn't think of him at all. I rearranged the living room, moved Theo's chair to face the back window where the trees dipped low in the evening breeze. I read old novels I'd meant to finish years ago. I drank tea while it was still hot. One night, I sat by the window with a blanket over my knees, and I realized something strange. I didn't miss the sound of another voice in the house. The quiet didn't echo. It rested. I wasn't angry. I wasn't mourning. I was simply done. I closed the curtains as the last light left the sky. The daffodils had faded by then, petals curling at the edges, but I didn't cut them back. Not yet. There was something honest in the way they held on. In the morning, I started boxing up Ethan's childhood things, softball trophies, faded drawings, old birthday cards. I labeled each box carefully and stacked them in the guest room, leaving just one shelf untouched. The wedding gift sat in the hall closet for too long. I passed it every day wrapped in silver paper ribbon, still neat. I had chosen it months ago, long before I understood the shape of things. I took it out one morning and placed it gently in the trunk of my car. Drove it to the donation center 2 towns over. They didn't ask what it was for. I didn't explain. It was a good set cookware, sturdy and expensive. Someone else would use it. That afternoon, I finished boxing the last of Ethan's things. His childhood drawings, the spelling bee medals, the blanket he refused to give up until middle school. I labeled each box, clearly numbered them, stored them in the guest room closet. But I didn't touch his old bedroom. The bed was still made. The shelves still held the model airplanes we built when he was 10. The desk had a few forgotten coins in the drawer and an old postcard from a school trip taped to the wall. I dusted, but didn't rearrange. I didn't change the curtains or repaint the walls. I left it the way it was, not out of hope, not as an invitation, but because some rooms shouldn't be rewritten just to make the pain easier to ignore. I don't expect Ethan to walk through the door. I don't expect a letter or an apology. But forgiveness doesn't always mean welcome. Sometimes it's just choosing not to bolt the lock behind you. There's space in that room. Not for him to move in, not to return to what was, but to remember that once there was a boy who sat cross-legged on that bed asking me to stay until he fell asleep. I leave the door open, cracked just enough to keep the air moving. Downstairs, the kettle begins to whistle. I turn off the heat, pour the water, and sit by the window again. Outside, the daffodils have faded entirely now. I'll dig up the bulbs before winter comes. But not just yet.